Hello, my name is Chris Campbell and we welcome you to another episode of One-on-One, where today our guest for this installment is educator, community activist, and City Council President, Dr. Lloyd Crews. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be here today.
Well, let's get right into it. This year has been unlike any other. As Council President, what's been your biggest challenge?
I would say probably our biggest challenge has been the Northland redevelopment. As many residents know, we've been working on this for a number of years now. It's been very difficult to find someone that actually has the financial means to come in and develop it in the way that we want the city to be developed. We don't just want to sell it to someone that will put something in our backyard that doesn't fit with the Southfield standard. So that has been a huge issue. Clearly, the other one has also been our current national discussion around police brutality and what we're doing about Black Lives Matter, and making sure that we're clear about that and that Southfield stands in support of that concept. We do need to say it. Black lives do matter. And while it's not necessarily a challenge for our police department per se, it's still a national challenge, and we still have to continue to work to be the best that we can be.
Absolutely. And let's talk about what's been going on a national basis and how that has impacted Southfield on a local level. Considering some of the national events related to police brutality and systemic racism, Southfield has been at the forefront for advocating for social change through peaceful demonstrations and policy reform. Now, as an African-American leader, unpack your feelings at what took place, especially as it related to the most recent event, George Floyd in Minneapolis, and how that informs what you do as an elected leader in the community.
Well, I kind of have to personalize it, to be honest, because although I've not been in that same position to have been abused by a police officer physically, I have been in altercations with police officers where I've been wrongly accused of things. In fact, I'll give one example. I was pulled over one day and the police officers told me that I was driving a stolen car, which was a car that I bought myself in my name. I had a registration, license, proof of insurance, and I had to spend a night in jail. And then they let me out the next day, gave me my information back and said, have a good day. So I've experienced it. When I think about my son, who's a 17-year-old high school graduate of Southfield High this year, I'm concerned every time he leaves out of the house. The media has been such a great tool for us to understand what's really going on in the world. And these incidents that we're seeing, you can probably multiply it times 10 or 20. I don't know. I don't have an exact number, but what I'm saying is that these are not the only ones that are happening. And so I'm very troubled out here. And when we go and look at our government, I don't feel that government is being responsive to this enough. You know, and I'm including ourselves here in Southfield too. We have to continue to be the standard bearer and be the example for people to look at and say, this is what a city should look like. But if you go all the way up the ranks, again, we have a president in our White House right now who is really not taking this seriously. And I don't think that this is something that's going to pass. The people that are committed to this, and it's not just Black people, and that's one of the beautiful things about this. Every time I see a march, it's a very diverse group of folks, because people understand it's not about just Black people, but that is the mantra. But anybody could be affected by this in any kind of way: class, race, gender, all those types of things. We need to be out here fighting and working hard to continue to make our communities safer and our nation a safer place to live, and someplace we want to be and not scared to be.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of what's been done locally, public safety personnel, especially the police chief, has been at the forefront in not only helping to sort of monitor those peaceful demonstrations, but also standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand with many of the protesters. And that's created a spirit of community. Talk about the public safety personnel and their role in being connected to a lot of these peaceful demonstrations.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that I feel that the council made an excellent decision in selecting Chief Elvin Barron. He has brought another breath of fresh air to the department to talk about a lot about community policing and better ways of de-escalating situations, and so that we don't have these very we don't have a rampant number of events that take place in Southfield. We're a pretty quiet city. When I read the reports every morning that we get from the department, they're very minor things that are taking place. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people feel comfortable with our police department. In some areas that you go, you see a police car and you get nervous. You say, oh Lord, what is about to happen now? I don't think people feel like that in Southfield. People feel like, thank goodness, there's a police officer. I'm safe, I'm secure, somebody's here. Our response times are very prompt and quickly. And we've had declining rates of crime in this city for over the last 7-8 years and so forth. So I think, with his leadership, he's done a great job with the police department. And I think that the community as a whole feels very secure with him at the helm, and with our department as a whole as being good community partners with the neighborhoods and the people that live in this city.
Indeed. Now let's talk about your role on City Council. You are City Council President, and yes, your role and basically your tenure has been noted for your balanced temperament. The ability to stay at an even keel even during council meetings where there are heated debates and dialogue happening. How important is it to have that kind of disposition when governing over city council meetings?
I see it as extremely important. If I'm noted for that, I'm thankful, because I wish people knew what was going through my mind sometimes as I'm sitting up there or when we're in those meetings, because they do get very testy. And it could be very easy for one to get kind of unraveled, if you will. I'll just have to say this: I have to give a ode to our former council president and former councilman Myron Frazier. I learned a very great deal of information from him just by watching him, number one, and then serving with him as president pro tem for 2 years. And so in my 2 years as president, I've kind of modeled myself a bit after him, along with my own, twist as well. And but I think that I'm all about civility and collegiality, working together. So although we might not agree on certain things at some times, let's find a middle ground. Where can we go from here? If we got an issue in front of us and we can agree on 70% of it, let's come back and talk about the 30% later. It's not about getting everything that you want all the time and when you want it. Even as an only child, somebody that wants everything all the time, I understand compromise, and I believe in it, and I understand about working together with people. And that has also come from just my background as an administrator for community college as well, where it's all about compromise. And you got to keep in mind the end game. At the college, the end game was always about the students. In this role as council president, the end game is all about the residents. And so that's where I start, and I work my way back from there. Absolutely.
Now let's talk about your teammates. It's been said that teamwork makes the dream work. Let's talk about your colleagues, those other council members and other elected leadership. What's it been like to work collaboratively with your fellow elected officials and getting things done on a city level here in Southfield?
Well, first of all, I would say I think that I have the greatest team of colleagues that you could have. It's probably the most collegial group of individuals that I've worked with in my professional life. What makes things difficult is the fact that because we are public officials, and the Open Meetings Act kind of precludes us from kind of having off-camera conversations. And so, unfortunately, we only get to talk together as a group when there's a public in a public setting with, the cameras on and all of that. Where there's sometimes that you could solve some things. I hate to say behind closed doors, but it really is the truth. I mean, it's just a personal one-on-one conversation with someone that can take place, or as a group to talk together and just kind of hammer some things out that you wouldn't want to have on camera necessarily. But of course, I understand, the whole concept of, people wanting to see what you're talking about at all times that are going to affect them. And because that could very easily go wrong by having too many conversations behind those closed doors. But some things I think we could hammer out a lot more easily if we just could get together and talk sometimes, just on a one-on-one basis. So that becomes kind of frustrating to me sometimes. Nonetheless, we do find a way to work through it. And I think if anyone's watched our council meetings or listened to them, you don't hear a lot of bickering. You don't hear a lot of screaming and complaining and stuff. You hear disagreements. People hear those disagreements out, and I do the best that I can as president to facilitate that discussion and get us to a point where we can move forward. Sometimes we can come to a decision during the meeting. Other times we have to maybe postpone it and have more time to study the subject or the topic and come back and have a later discussion. But overall, I couldn't work with a better group of people.
What's been your most rewarding moment as council president?
Wow. It's kind of hard to say because we do work as a legislative body, so I find it hard for me to take credit for anything personally because it's a collective group of people that come together with ideas. Again, I'm more so the facilitator of those things. But I could say some things that just recently, I mean, the Black Lives Matters banners that are on Evergreen Road. Every time I drive down Evergreen, I just feel proud that we got that done. The renaming of Civic Center Drive to Martin Luther King Boulevard makes me proud. During my tenure as president, we've had the opportunity to hire another African-American chief of police, city attorney, and human resources director. Those things make me proud because I hear complaints from people at times that talk about the diversity in the city and that we lack it in our city government, and we really don't. And those are very key positions. And there are other African-Americans and other people of other colors, races, and creeds, and so forth that are in this organization that people don't necessarily see all the time, but are here and that are working hard and taking care of this city. But it's very important for me to have people of color in key leadership positions because I think that lens gives us a better opportunity to make the city better and when we're making decisions about how it's going to affect this city. We know that Southfield is a predominantly African-American city, and so it should reflect that in some way. And I think that's one of the ways that, that's one of the things I'm proud of, is that it is reflecting it even more since I've had the time to be in this role. And at the end of the day, my ultimate goal will be to make Southfield one of the most affluent African-American cities in this country. And that's what I want. That's my end game, is to make that happen.
Yes. Now, in terms of other stakeholders and team members, talk about city employees and the role that they've had in helping City Council achieve its goals and objectives.
My God, we couldn't live without the employees here. They're excellent employees. Everyone here, I have not come in contact with any one person in this organization that has not stepped up to the plate whenever needed to do what they needed to do. Whether it was on our time or their time, their goal was to make things happen. And so I give kudos to all of our Southfield City employees, thank you for the work that you do. Like I said, whether it's on our time or yours, you're going to make it happen regardless. And I'm very proud of that too. I mean, I think it's just excellent. We've hired some great individuals that work in this organization and who have great potential to do even better things or make greater contributions than they already are making. And I want to see those people move to those positions and at higher levels within the organization as well.
Absolutely. Now, so far we've gotten a look and a closer look at you as a leader in the community, but let's peer behind the curtain and just talk about you as a man and as a father. You are a father, so how have you been able to balance being an educator, a community leader, and a parent?
It's been quite difficult, I must say. My son has pretty much grown up with me doing all of those things along with me. And he probably hadn't liked it all the time because I've dragged him to every event I've had to go to, every debate I've been a part of, all those types of things ever since he was 5 years old. Anywhere I went, he went. And I'm a single father, so I mean, I raised that boy by myself for the most part. And he has turned out to be a very fine young man as far as I'm concerned. I mean, like I said, he just graduated from high school. He's coming to Oakland Community College where I work. So he'll be there with me for a couple of years before he goes off to a 4-year institution. The work-life balance, I mean, it really is tough. There have been some days where, you know, I had to really struggle to get him to go with me some places when he didn't want to. As he got older, he was allowed to stay at home a little bit of time by himself. And, you know, I always hated that because I'm just worried about everything, what's going on. Not that he was going to do anything per se. It was more of the elements in the society that I just don't ever want him to be alone. I wanted to cover him. And, but he understands, especially more now as he gotten older, that what I do and what I do for the community and so forth, just is my calling. This is just who I am, and this is what I do. And he's taken on that same calling, I think, as well. We'll see. He's still a young man, but you know, we'll see where he goes. I didn't try to make him into what I am. I want him to be his own person, but I do always want him to remember that, you know, community is always important, no matter who you are and what you do. Absolutely.
Now, mentoring has been a focus of yours for years, and this was quite evident as you are the founder of OCC Man Up Mentoring Program. Just unpack how important mentoring has been to what you do.
It's changed my life in a lot of ways, much like raising my son. The thing about it is that the young men in the mentoring programs tend to listen to me more than my son does. But nonetheless, you see the need for mentoring out here in our communities. And when I say the need for it, it doesn't mean that there's an absent father necessarily in the home. I have a number of young men that have come through my program. Their fathers have brought them there, and they have been a part of the process with us because they understand, like I do, when you're a father, kids don't like to listen to their parents so much, right? But they will listen to someone else. And so a good father will make you a part of that program and help find that mentorship and to have that take place. As part of that program, I've actually had 3 young men who have interned with the city of Southfield under the leadership of our city administrator, Fred Zorn, have taken on unpaid but internships for the summer. One actually even gave a presentation at the city council meeting just a few months ago, getting very good experience. And, you know, it's just the connections that have been made. And I'm not the only one that's been able to help get some internships. Some of the other facilitators have taken on some young men and mentored them as well. And I mean, I just think that the program just tries to help fill the gap that some of our young men may have. And having a program that's strictly men, you know, all male students, all male instructors, all male facilitators, black men in those classes. Now, we're not limited to our students are not limited to just African American. It's any young man that wants to be a part of it. But we have kept the focus on terms of the leadership of the group and the teaching and learning part of it, as all African American men that have accomplished very great things. And those students leave that program with 2 college credits in their high school years, and it's absolutely free.
Nice, very nice. Now, you're very unassuming about this. In fact, you tend to keep this kind of low key, but you have a doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies. You're Dr. Lloyd Crews.
Yes.
So how important has education been to you, and how do you emphasize the need for education when you're mentoring young men?
Well, I have to start off by just saying that, number one, I never in my life dreamed I would have even gotten that far in terms of education. I was not a very good student as growing up. I did manage to finish Cass Tech, barely, but I love my alma mater, and they trained me well, as best as they could. But as I started to go through my undergraduate years, what I found in near my senior year or so, that I started to helping freshman students kind of find their way on campus. I had an internship in the advising office, and students would come in there with questions all the time, and I was able to answer them. And I said, "No, okay, this is cool," and that was helpful. And people came back and said, "Well, what about this?" And I had an answer for them, and so forth. Then I found out there's actually a job in this, an academic advisor, and which became my first job in higher education, was an academic advisor. And I enjoyed it. I loved it because I was able to help people and help students get through the process. There's so many informal barriers in college, and especially for students of color, that first time at a college, parents have not been to college, that they just don't know. They show up, we give them a room to stay in and a scholarship or something, and then say, go for it. Well, that's not enough. And so you need those wraparound services on campuses to make that happen. And so I guess I just kind of saw where I came from to where I got to is why education is so important to me. And I don't even just say education in terms of, well, you got to get a bachelor's, master's, PhD. Educate yourself in a skilled trade as well. I'm very much an advocate for that too. I think that, because that's education just as well. The whole idea is that you prepare yourself to have the best quality of life that you can have for yourself and for your future family members and children, or whatever the case may be. And so it's imperative to me to not let any young man get by me that doesn't have a plan and doesn't have an idea of where they're going and what they're going to do, and that they're going in the right pathway. And my goal is to say, tell everyone, pursue your passion. There's money to be made in any field of human endeavor if you're good at it. So just follow your passion, go hard at it, be strong, and you can accomplish anything. So education just is everything to me now. When it wasn't as a younger student years ago, right now that's the only thing that's important to me now.
Yes. Now, in terms of educational and communal families and fraternities, shout out, of course, to Cass Tech, being an alumni as well there. Let's talk a little bit about fraternity. You're part of the Southfield Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Let's give a quick acknowledgement to your Kappa brothers and talk about what it's like serving in the Southfield chapter.
Well, actually, I'm a Detroit Southfield member as well as Southfield, so I work through both of them. The one committee that I focus on more so is the foundation, which deals with education and scholarships for young men coming out of coming out of high school and so forth. So I spend a lot of time there. And then along with that, I do a lot of work in terms of just facilitating programs and so forth, especially with the city now. In fact, we had a march down Martin Luther King Drive just recently that the Southfield Kappas put together, that I helped work with along with Chief Barron. I just make myself available to the fraternity for whatever's necessary. I really I don't carry a formal role because I really don't have the time to do it. But the chapters both know that I'm just a phone call away. And so when there's anything that is needed from me that's in my disposal to do, then it's done. It's not a problem. So the fraternity, the bond is very strong, and we all look out for each other and take care of each other in any way we can, whether it comes down to internships, mentorships, job opportunities, all those types of things. I'm always working on those projects.
Now, you're also involved with numerous organizations. Briefly give an experience with one or two of them.
I was president of the Southfield Rotary Club for about 4 years, and we did a number of community events in Southfield. We were a small club. We didn't get a whole lot of traction out of it, but the group of us that was together was very solid, and we did a number of community projects throughout the city of Southfield over the years while I was affiliated with the group. I still am, but I'm just not in the role of president at this time. I've also been a state president for the Michigan College Personnel Association, which was probably my biggest role I had before I got onto city council, if you will. That is an organization of all 2-year and 4-year institutions in the state of Michigan that deal with student affairs. And so we had a membership of over 500 people throughout the state of Michigan. And I served as president there and led that charge. And again, that just goes back to all about the service for students and how we can do better at that. We've done national presentations for the national conferences on race and ethnicity, student affairs, published articles, all those types of things. So those have been very rewarding types of things as well. I was also on the board of the Boys and Girls Club for South Oakland County for a number of years too, and we raised a lot of money to provide programming for students. And that was a very rewarding one. I really liked serving there because you got to see the benefit of those. I had a lot of students that came through the Boys and Girls Club that ended up in some of my classes after they got out of high school, but you're really nurturing them from a very early age, giving them programs and projects, leadership opportunities to grow and build their skills, and raising money for them for scholarships and so forth. So, you know, those are just some of the ones. American Red Cross, I was on the board of that as well for a number of years, which I found that ultimately to be important for me. When I became ill at a period of time, I took a lot of blood that I had to get to keep me alive, to be honest. Then I remember back to those days, I said, wow, this is a very important thing I was doing, because when you're in that seat and when you're laying in that bed, you're saying, wow, this is good work people are doing. So I'm a blood donor all the time. You know, anytime they come around, I'm giving mine up because I know somebody needs it somewhere.
Nice, nice. Now, it sounds like your schedule and your life is just chock full of activities and city-related events and activities and governance. What do you do in your spare time? Do you have any hobbies?
I do. I love to play golf, and I love to bowl. Those are really two of my favorite things to do.
What's your handicap?
16.
Oh.
Not very good. Just because I love to do it doesn't mean I'm good at it. But I'm a very good bowler now, I will say that.
Nice.
But I enjoyed, you know, golf time is really, for me, is just peaceful time. You get a couple hours out on the golf course to just kind of play your game, get some time to reflect while you're waiting for the next hole to come up and things like that. And you know, that's an important thing to be able to do, because as soon as you leave, it's right back to the rat race. You're right back in it. I mean, it just, you know, this job as city council president, it never stops. It's a 24-hour-a-day job, even though, you know, it's often referred to as a part-time job. which it is, but it's a full-time job. The city never shuts down. And so in between classes, I'm on phone calls, I'm on Zoom meetings now, things of that nature. So my days are, and you have to switch those gears because, you know, one minute you're lecturing on public opinion and in political science and so forth, and then the next thing, an hour later, I'm talking about the deer population in the city of Southfield. I mean, it's just like you got to keep changing hats so often. It's kind of frustrating and tiring, to be honest. So I guess if you ask what other hobby I would have, probably just to be quiet for a while and just cut the phone off and sit still, maybe listen to a little jazz and relax.
Yes, yes. Now, with relation to Southfield, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what does Southfield mean to you? And then, compound question, long term, what is your overarching goal for the city?
Well, I tell people this all the time now. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. I remember as a young kid, probably about 9 or 10 years old, that was like in the early 80s, it was a mass exodus in our neighborhood from Detroit to Southfield. We were the only ones that were left. And my whole life, I always wanted to live in Southfield. It was like, I just couldn't wait to grow up. And I said, when I get big, I'm gonna move to Southfield, because that was the thing. And I still feel that same way about Southfield. I think this is the best place to live that I could think of. I ask people all the time, what city would you want to live in if you had your choice of any city in this area? And, you know, most people come up with Southfield. Some people do complain and say, oh, your taxes are too high. Okay, but our services are so good. You have to pay for what you get. Our housing market is very strong. We have beautiful homes, beautiful neighborhoods. The people here care so much about what's going on. My neighbors, I talk to them. I mean, we have relationships with each other. We have phone numbers. I mean, it's not just, you know, you don't know what's going on around you. You know, people will bring it. If I'm not home at the time the trash is picked up, I come home, people have pulled my trash cans back to my garage already. You know, just because they were out, they said, oh, I'll just take it back. I mean, you don't find that in too many places. And, you know, the fact that we're located in such a central location by all the major freeways, meaning you can get to just about anywhere you planning to go in the next 20 minutes, also makes it extremely attractive. And that is the minority community. I love that too, as well. Not that I don't want to diversify anymore. Of course we do. We're welcoming to everybody. But it is also pretty awesome though. And like I said, ultimately long term, if this community continues to be a minority community, particularly African Americans, I want us to be the lead in that. I want us to be the most affluent community in the United States. I want people talking about us on the news and saying, hey, have y'all seen what Southfield is doing down there? I just want us to be a leader in all areas, in education, in business and commerce, our neighborhoods. Let's take the lead and keep it going. So I'm always looking forward to seeing, you know, or thinking about not what is or what was, but what can be.
Yeah, very well. Now, is there anything that we may have missed asking that you would want our viewing audience to know, either about the city of Southfield, some of the activities that you're involved in, or organizations?
Well, I think it was a pretty comprehensive list of the things that we talked about today. I just want people to know that, you know, that myself, along with this council, our mayor, our staff, are all working diligently every day. The COVID crisis, I think we have handled wonderfully. It hit everybody out of the blue. Nobody knew this was coming. It was held under wraps for so long, and then all of a sudden the outbreaks just took place. And again, I'm just going to have to go back to the city staff, to our administrator on down, in terms of jumping in and saying, okay, what do we need to do, and how can we rectify this? And everybody just pitched in everywhere they could, because they were thinking about the residents. They weren't thinking about themselves. Everybody here is always got the residents in mind, from city council, the mayor, the administrator on down. It's like, what can we do to make things right? And so if residents are sometimes frustrated with us, I understand. We're not always going to get everything right. Every decision is going to make some people happy and some people not so happy. But understand it's all done in good spirit and in an effort to make this city better. And we appreciate your support, and we appreciate hearing from you as well too. Good, bad, or indifferent. Please reach out to us if there's ever anything that concerns you. We'll do our best to rectify that situation. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Crews, we thank you so much for having this conversation with us, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon, sir.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Now, to view this episode of One-on-One, you can do so by visiting our Facebook and YouTube pages at Southfield Multimedia Services, in addition to viewing the show on the channel. For One-on-One, my name is Chris Campbell, and we will see you next time.